Hey guys, we are going to be doing an author study. We're going to be reading and listening to several books by the same author and talking about how the author has a certain style with characters and setting and themes, and even the storyline, like the beginning, middle, and end of the stories are very similar. So I want to introduce you to this group of books, and then in my next video I'll read you one, and then I'll keep making new videos for each book that we're doing. So this is going to be one. This is The Legend of the White Buffalo Woman by Paul Goble. That's the author we're going to study. I have another one of his books. It's called The Great Race of the Birds and Animals. Again, Paul Goble. You can probably see just even by his illustrations the similarities. This one's called Her Seven Brothers. Okay, you can kind of see again that similar illustration style. Beyond the Ridge, Story and Illustrations by Paul Goble. Again, very similar style. I really kind of like it. It's very different. Star Boy is the next one. And then one of my favorites, I used to read this one a lot as a little girl. This is called The Girl Who Loved Wild Horses, and this is a Caldecott medal-winning book. Paul Goble, I'm going to read you a little bit of his history. I have a little bit of his history in The Legend of the White Buffalo Woman, and it's important to read a little bit of his history before we begin reading some of his stories, okay? So down here it talks about Paul Goble. Paul Goble has written and illustrated more than 30 books for children on Native American myths and culture, including the Caldecott Award-winning The Girl Who Loved Wild Horses. Okay, that was one of the ones I showed you, and I will be reading. He has been interested in everything Native American for as long as I can remember. Born in England, he first visited the United States in 1959 and traveled to Montana and North Dakota to be in Indian country. After several summers spent on Indian reservations while he studied and then taught design in England, he finally moved to the Black Hills of South Dakota. Okay, that's where like Mount Rushmore is. The Black Hills were considered sacred by the Native Americans for a long time. Okay, when as a young man, I first went to Native American dances and ceremonies. It saddened me to realize that most of the children were more interested in baseball and rodeo. I was living in England at the time, and it was primarily with these children in mind that I wrote and illustrated my first books. I wanted them to feel proud of their culture. It was important that their parents liked the books, but it was even more important that their great-parents smiled and nodded, because I wanted to picture and write about the proud old days which they knew about. So as you can see here, Paul Goble, he actually wasn't a Native American himself, but he's actually written a lot of Native American books, and he went and studied their culture. He spent a great deal of time listening to these stories, okay? So these are traditional Native American stories retold by Paul Goble after listening to some of the elders, the great-grandparents in the Native American cultures to be able to write and illustrate these stories. So it helped provide Native American children kind of a sense of pride in seeing their stories that they grew up with and hearing become published and shared. So as I read, I want you to make sure you're listening to the characters, you're listening and thinking about the setting, the problems, the solutions, and we're going to talk about how they're the same across all of these stories here. So I hope you enjoy this study with me.